Hello everyone. It is Monday, February 28th, 3:19 p.m. And I just figured I'd come on here and make a quick video. Actually, it's probably not going to be quick. Just some things that have been on my mind, I've been contemplating. And I'll be honest with you, with all the stuff going on currently in the world, I'm finding it increasingly difficult to concentrate on my mundane tasks of the day, although I do have to do what I have to do, but I find it hard to concentrate and to talk about nonsense, and I'm just oh man. So I figured I'd come on here, give myself a break from the world and make a video about about the world as it pertains to our current situation. Um but specifically, I want to talk about the consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And so, as everybody knows, there's some major controversy surrounding this topic. So you have one camp of people who say that Russia was consecrated to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and that happened. I think the one they point to is in 1985 by Pope John Paul II. You also have some that say it happened prior to that by Pope, I think Pius, one of the Pius, I'm not sure which one. And then you have the other camp of people who say no, it absolutely did not happen and it still needs to be done. So I want to give my opinion on the situation. Not that it matters. I don't know. I don't think anybody could know for sure, right? Um, but I think it's very. I don't know. I think it's very. I don't know the word I'm looking for. Obviously, something has happened to Russia. Obviously, there has been a conversion of sorts started. Um, Not to Catholicism, but to the Orthodox Church with its valid sacraments, although they are heretics. They are in error. They do not believe in, obviously, the papal infallibility. And there's one other one. I think it's maybe the Immaculate Conception. I'm not sure, but it's a Marian dogma that they do not believe in. However, it cannot be denied that after Pope John Paul II consecrated the Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary in 1985, something happened. Some that started the process. Now, whether that was accepted by God or not, I don't know. Maybe it was just enough to give Russia some graces. But graces were given to Russia for their, I would say, the start of their conversion. Now, the ultimate conversion will be what St. Maximilian Kolbe prophesies as being the Immaculate Heart of Mary replacing the red star above the Kremlin. That was St. Maximilian Kolbe's prophecy, and obviously that hasn't happened yet. However, I don't think it can anybody can deny the Russian influence, the Christian influence that has seemingly overtaken Russia. Now, maybe it's an act. I don't know. Maybe it's some diabolical plot. I'm not really sure. But I do know Putin sounds more Christian than Biden does. Is that so? I mean, they're not trying to slaughter their babies. They're kicking out the globalist agenda. And that's what I want to get to right now. Is Russia being painted as this psychotic, evil empire because they're simply going against the dehumanization agenda, the global elite agenda? Now, I know this is probably not going to be a popular video, but I have to speak the truth and I have to call things like I see it. And I think there's evidence that's starting to come to light that maybe Russia just didn't want Nazis, as Putin is calling them, surrounding or on the border of his country. Okay, so I do not agree with his decision to invade Ukraine. But I do think he was provoked to a point where it is a reasonable option, unlike what the West is saying. Listen, if we had Russia or China or somebody on our southern border amassing weapons, we would it wouldn't take 8 years for us to do something about it, because that's when this started. In 2014, under Obama, is when it started. Okay, and Russia has continually tried to petition the UN and things to stop amassing weapons on their border. I mean, I don't think that's an unreasonable request. So, really, I think the bigger problem we need to ask ourselves is, well, let me just show you some things before I continue on here. But this is what this video is going to be about. The controversial topic of the consecration of Russia, where we are now, what happened, what is happening, what are we being told versus what is the truth. And I think it's a really important thing to ask ourselves so we don't find ourselves totally supporting an agenda that is not what it seems. You know, the West is doing a really good job of making it seem that Putin's this crazed, power hungry leader. And you know what? Maybe that's partially true. Maybe he is the bad man. I don't know. But we have to look at this objectively. And we have to understand Russia is in a very unique position to be able to identify things that destroy societies. They have firsthand experience with globalists coming in to Russia, started in with the Balkan Revolution, and overthrowing their civilization. They have firsthand experience with that. So they are in a better position to be able to identify these people because make no mistake about it. As Father Ripperger will tell you if you listen to his talks, communism is the brainchild of Freemasonry. This was a Freemasonic plot going back to right around when Our Lady of Fatima appeared, probably even before that. But it's their belief system. It's their political structure for their Masonic ideas. It's their utopia, right? So Russia's in a very good position to be able to see this. And that's what people don't really understand. So yes, they have a horrible past. No, they shouldn't be trusted completely, but they see something, people are laughing at Putin for saying he wants to denazify Ukraine because it's on his border. Well, George Soros is his father, I think, was a Nazi. Like, he has Nazi ties and he is in Ukraine, like, he's in everywhere trying to push his agenda. And what is that agenda? It's liberalism. It's this complete overthrow of Christian values. And Putin is simply saying, at least this is what he says. I don't know. I have no reason to disbelieve the man. Maybe it's a facade. I don't know. I know he does hang out with Henry Kissinger and stuff like that, but at least he's giving the appearance that we want Christian values to run Russia. Christians are welcome here. Okay. He was the one bombing ISIS in Syria. Remember that? Okay, so let's I want to read a couple things. I want to switch my screen around and show you a couple things and let you make your own decision. I don't know what's going on. I do know that whenever the Democrats say something, I know that the opposite is true. So right now they're saying Putin's bad and he's the enemy and all this stuff. So I have to look into that because I can't go along with that because they hold no standing. They hold no moral standing in my view. So for them to start making moral judgments, I have to look at that personally. All right. All right. So this was written. This is on CatholicProphecy.info, and it's Reverend J.L. Iannuzzi, S.T.D. Ph.D. And you can look him up. His name pops up everywhere, but I think he really does a fair job at describing this issue, that we're seeing because, we're being told a lot. And I think we can't limit God. Okay. Yes. Obviously, the error of Russia has spread throughout the world. That part is not debatable. And what is that? Well, that's that communism, right? Those are the errors of communism for the most part. And all the nastiness that goes along with that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Russia will continue to spread those errors. Our Lady did say that Russia will spread her errors throughout the world. Although in the end, she would be converted later, and she would be, consecrated, although it would be late, and in the end, the Immaculate Heart would triumph. Russia would be converted, and there will be an era of peace, or a period of peace for the world. Now, some say that this relative peace has happened with the dismantling of the Soviet Union and obviously the peaceful revolution of the Cold War and things like that. I'm not sure. I don't know if we could say that there's been a period of peace for the entire world at the same time. And I would hope that was what Our Lady was referring to. So I'm hopeful that we'll still see that, although it may be after many chastisements. But I think what we need to we shouldn't underestimate in the final equation our Lord and Our Lady using Russia as an instrumental country for their salvation to fight the New World Order, so to speak, to fight the same people that devastated them, that came in with force and really enslaved them under communism. Why? Because they're in a unique position. Like I said, they've already lived through this. They know the players. They understand intimately the propaganda and the method that was used on them. So that's where it gets complicated. So this is a little long, bear with me, but I think it's important. So in recent years, the faithful have asked me to address the question of whether or not the consecration of Russia requested by Mary has been done. In response, I begin by recalling the third apparition of Our Lady of Fatima on July 13th, 1917, in which Mary showed the three shepherd children the vision of hell and revealed, "You have seen hell where the souls of poor sinners go. To save them, God wishes to establish in the world devotion to my Immaculate Heart. If what I say to you is done, many souls will be saved and there will be peace. The war is going to end. If people do not cease offending God, a worse one will break out during the pontificate of Pius XI. When you see a night illumined by an unknown light, know that this is the great sign given you by God that he is about to punish the world for its crimes, by means of war, famine, and persecutions of the Church and of the Holy Father. To prevent this, I shall come to ask for the consecration of Russia to my Immaculate Heart, and the communion of reparation on the first Saturdays. If my requests are heeded, Russia will be converted and there will be peace. If not, she will spread her errors throughout the world, causing wars and persecutions of the Church. The good will be martyred. The Holy Father will have much to suffer. Various nations will be annihilated. In the end, my Immaculate Heart will triumph. The Holy Father will consecrate Russia to me, and she shall be converted, and a period of peace will be granted to the world." In the last apparition of Fatima of June 13th, 1929, Lucia relates, "Our Lady then said to me, 'The moment has come in which God asks the Holy Father, in union with all the bishops of the world, to make the consecration of Russia to my Immaculate Heart, promising to save it by this means. There are so many souls whom the justice of God condemns for sins committed against me that I have come to ask reparation. Sacrifice yourself for this intention and pray.'" Let us now review the papal consecrations of Russia and of the world to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. In March 1937 and in 1938, respectively, Bishop de Silva Liria in the Portuguese episcopate asked Pope Pius XI for the consecration of the world to the Immaculate Heart. No consecration is made. In December 1940, Sister Lucia writes a letter to Pope Pius XII affirming that our Lord himself requests the Pope to consecrate the world to the Immaculate Heart of Mary with a special mention for Russia, and to order that all the bishops of the world do so, or do the same in union with your holiness. On October 31st, 1942, Pope Pius XII consecrates the world to the Immaculate Heart. On July 7th, 1952, Pope Pius XII consecrates the Russian people to the Immaculate Heart through his apostolic letter, Sacro Vergente Anno, in which he affirms, "Just as a few years ago we consecrated the entire human race to the Immaculate Heart of the Virgin Mary, Mother of God, so today we consecrate, and in a most special manner we entrust all the peoples of Russia to this Immaculate Heart." On November 21st, 1964, Pope Paul VI renews, in the presence of the Fathers of the Vatican Council, but without their participation, the consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart. On May 13th, 1982, Pope John Paul II invites the bishops of the world to join him in consecrating the world, and with it Russia to the Immaculate Heart. Many do not receive the invitation in time for the Pope's trip to Fatima, where he accomplishes the consecration, but Sister Lucia later says it did not fulfill the conditions. October 1983, Pope John Paul II at the Synod of Bishops renews the 1982 consecration. On March 25th, 1984, Pope John Paul II united all the pastors of the Church in a particular bond whereby we constitute a body and a college, consecrates the whole world, especially the peoples for which by reason of their situation you have particular love and solicitude. But the Pope and Sister Lucia initially seemed uncertain that the consecration has been fulfilled. But shortly thereafter, Sister Lucia tells the papal nuncio to Portugal that the consecration is fulfilled. And so Father Amorth actually organized this event on March 25th, and he was the exorcist of Rome. And he said because the Pope was getting so much political pressure not to say Russia, they wouldn't let him mention Russia specifically. So that's why it reads, consecrates the whole world, especially the peoples for which by reason of their situation you have particular love and solicitude. In the light of the proceedings, Sister Lucia would pen two monumental letters with her own hand in answer to the question pertaining to the validity of the consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. In two handwritten letters of August 29th, 1989 and of July 3rd, 1990, Sister Lucia affirms that Russian consecration requested by Our Lady was made. See the two letters reported below. Let us now review from a practical angle the validity of the consecration of Russia to Mary's Immaculate Heart. Let us recall on June 13th, 1929 that Mary stated, "The Holy Father will consecrate Russia to her and Russia will be converted." Some have questioned if Mary's deliberate use of the future tense here qualifies as prophecy of the 1984 consecration that Lucia said was made as Our Lady requested. While past pontiffs had consecrated the people of Russia and the world to Mary, others have contested that consecrating the people of Russia without the Episcopal College and the world with the Episcopal College does not count for consecrating specifically Russia in union with the Episcopal College. To get beyond this impasse, a brief review of the importance of methodology is in order. In all accredited disciplines, there is no reliability of a given source without a method of research. Methodology distinguishes primary from secondary sources with the aim of ensuring reliability of a given source. A primary source, e.g., Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta read the Fatima messages, provides direct or first-hand account of an event or person. On the other hand, a secondary source discusses, interprets, comments upon, and analyzes the primary source, e.g., all those who comment on the Fatima message. This is a pivotal distinction as it exposes to the reader the disparity of authority enjoyed by a primary and secondary source. The first-hand witness is the primary source who enjoys a greater authority re the event witnessed than the secondary source. In the case of the Fatima message, Lucia remains the primary source. Human reason would have one first look to the primary source for the answer to the question on whether or not Russia was consecrated according to Our Lady's request. Here is Lucia's response contained in her handwritten letters of August 29th, 1989 and July 3rd, 1990. Letters of Sister Lucia Santos, OCD, on the consecration. Letter 1 to Sister Mary of Bethlehem, J+M, Pax Christi. Dear Sister Mary of Bethlehem, received your letter, and although I have very little time at my disposal, I will answer your question, which is the consecration of the world according to the request of Our Lady made? On October 31st, 1942, His Holiness Pius XII made the consecration. I was asked if it was made as Our Lady requested, and I answered no, because it was not made in union with all the bishops of the world. Later, on May 13th, 1967, His Holiness Paul VI made the consecration. I was asked if it was made as Our Lady requested. I responded no, for the same reason. It was not made in union with all the bishops of the world. On May 13th, 1982, His Holiness John Paul II made the consecration. I was asked if it was made. I responded no. It was not made in union with all the bishops of the world. Then the same Supreme Pontiff, John Paul II, wrote to all the bishops of the world asking them to unite with him. He sent for the statue of Our Lady of Fatima, the one from the little chapel, to be taken to Rome, and on March 25th, 1984, publicly with the bishops who wanted to unite with His Holiness, made the consecration as Our Lady requested. They then asked me if it was made as Our Lady requested, and I said yes, now it was made. Why this urgency of God that this consecration should be made in union with all the bishops of the world? Because this consecration is a call for unity of all Christians, the mystical body of Christ whose head is the Pope, the one true representative of Christ on earth, to whom the Lord confided the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and on this union depends the faith in the world and the charity which is the bond that must unite all of us in Christ, as that which He wants, and as He asked the Father, as you, O Father, are in me and I in you, that they also may be one in us, that the world may believe that you have sent me, I in them and you in me, that they may be made perfect in one, and the world may know that you have sent me and have loved them as you have loved me. John 17:21 through 23. As we see of the union depends the faith and the charity that must be the bonds of our union in Christ, whose true representative on earth is the Pope. A hug to your mother and my greetings to the rest of the family in union with prayers. Cambria, August 29th, 1989, Sister Lucia. J plus M, Pax Christi, Reverend Do Senior P. Robert J. Fox. And that is not an English translation. I come to answer your question. If the consecration made by Pope John Paul II on March 25, 1984, in union with all the bishops of the world, accomplished the conditions for the consecration of Russia according to the request of Our Lady on June 13th of 1929. Yes, it was accomplished, and since then I have said that it was made. And I say that no other person responds for me. It is I who receive and open all letters and respond to them. So, July 3rd, 1990, Sister Lucia. For a more practical angle, let us now examine the fruits of the March 25th, 1984 consecration that Lucia affirmed was made as Our Lady requested and was accomplished, to see if they are good fruits. For Jesus himself revealed, every good tree bears good fruit, and a rotten tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a rotten tree bear good fruit. So by their fruits you will know them. Matthew 7:17 through 21. Subsequent to the March 25th, 1984 consecration, the following events occurred. On May 13th, 1984, one of the largest crowds in Fatima history gathers at the shrine to pray the Rosary for peace. On May 13th, 1984, an explosion at the Soviets' Severomorsk naval base destroys 2/3 of all the missiles stockpiled for the Soviets' Northern Fleet. The blast also destroys workshops needed to maintain the missiles, as well as hundreds of scientists and technicians. Western military experts called it the worst naval disaster the Soviet Navy had suffered since World War II. December 1984, the Soviet defense minister, mastermind of the invasion plans for Western Europe, suddenly and mysteriously dies. On March 10th, 1985, the Soviet Union leader and Communist Party member, Chairman Konstantin Chernenko dies. On March 11th, 1985, the Soviet chairman Mikhail Gorbachev is elected. So all those would have actually been prior to. I'm sorry. That's wrong. Okay, so it was March 25th, 1984. I think I was wrong in the beginning. I said 1985, so sorry. That the consecration by John Paul II was made. On April 26, 1986, the Chernobyl nuclear reactor accident occurs that potentially staves off a nuclear strike during the Cold War era. On April 26, 1987, the first anniversary of Chernobyl, the Virgin Mary is reported to have appeared to a 12-year-old girl, Maria Kazan, and later to thousands of adults at the Chapel of the Blessed Trinity in a small Ukrainian village of Hrushchev, 530 kilometers southwest of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster. The August 1987 article in Liturano Gazzetta affirmed that more than 100,000 people converged on the village in the first month, and despite the Soviet authorities having locked up the chapel where the vision occurred, the paper revealed that 40,000 to 45,000 faithful visit the site daily. On May 12, 1988, an explosion wrecked the only factory that made the rocket mortars for the Soviets' deadly SS-24 long-range missiles, which carried 10 nuclear bombs each. On August 29, 1989, concerning the consecration of Russia, Sister Lucia writes, "They then asked me if it was made as Our Lady requested, and I said yes, now it was made." On November 9, 1989, the fall of the Berlin Wall occurs, and Christian freedom in public worship is permitted throughout all of Eastern Europe for the first time since the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution. November through December 1989, peaceful revolutions in Czechoslovakia, Romania, Bulgaria, and Albania. 1990, East and West Germany are unified. July 3rd, 1990, Sister Lucia affirms in correspondence that the consecration has been accomplished. December 25th, 1991, there occurs the dissolution of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Given the foregoing, I think that's Pope John Paul II and Sister Lucia. Given the foregoing, and in light of my many travels to all continents of the globe that include Russia and Ukraine, where he preached there on several occasions, I invite you to reflect on the spiritual and moral status quo of the Western and Eastern Church, and make up your minds on whether or not Russia has been converted or not. In the Western world, in Western Europe, at least 28 cathedrals were sold, and are still being sold, to become casinos, hotels, cafeterias, mountains for alpinists. The churches are getting emptier by the year, and many Christians have apostatized. Many priests, too, are failing Jesus, and monasteries and convents are emptying. Governments are extinguishing the little light left of Christianity in public schools and in public places, and prohibit the catechism in schools under the pretext that there are other religions in the classroom which they will offend. The European Union allows gay marriages even in churches, and much more immorality has spread in the Western world, losing all the human and spiritual values previous generations had labored to establish. However, in Russia, hundreds of new churches are being built out of necessity, and the ones now in use are more than full with believers. The Russian churches are filled with the faithful to the brim, and the monasteries and convents are packed with new voices. The government in Russia does not deny Christ, but speaks openly and encourages schools to keep their Christianity and teach their pupils their catechism. The government, together with the church, declared openly that they will not be part of the European Union because the EU has lost its moral values in their Christianity as they had in the past under the Soviet Union. So that's my point. That's my point. They understand the problem the West is having because they've already went through it. So why do the Democrats and why does the West, the Western leaders, why are they trying to instigate this war? Because they make no mistake about it, they are. They've been trying to instigate it since really under Obama, maybe probably even sooner. But the point is, even under, like, when we had Trump as president, right? What did we hear for his entire presidency? He's in collusion with Russia. Russia collusion. Russia. They tried to impeach him over Russia collusion. And so they're trying to at least put into the minds of the general public this this collusion, or I guess you could say, or just this connection between the conservative right in Russia. And why are they doing that? Because Russia is not going to fall for their antics. Okay, Russia is not going to fall for transgenderism and all this stuff that we in the West are the woke agenda. Russia's not having the woke agenda because they've already lived through that. They've already defeated that in their country. That's my point. So why does the West want to start a World War III, basically, with Russia as the bad guy? Well, because Russia's not going to go along with their plan, so Russia has to be eliminated. Not only that, but once Russia, these sanctions can quite possibly make Russia default on their debts, right? And that would have disastrous consequences for the economy, just worldwide, for the worldwide economy, which would give them an opening to, for their digital currency and whatever else. So just understand that it's not as simple as Putin being a monster invading Ukraine, okay? It's not. Okay. Russia declared that gays are not welcomed. I'm sorry. The government, together with the church, uh, openly, did I read this? I'm not sure, declared openly that they will not be part of the European Union because the EU has lost its moral values and their Christianity as they had in the past under the Soviet Union. They left their faith and denied Christ. This time, they declared, no one will tear us away from our faith, and we will defend our faith until death. Russia declared that gays are not welcomed and not allowed to make processions, let alone gay marriages. Russia declared that any foreigner who wants to live in Russia will be asked, number 1, to learn Russian, number 2, to become Christian and follow their traditions. If not, they are not welcomed. Note, while Russia is predominantly Orthodox Christian, they have all 7 sacraments, which Rome acknowledges as valid. They allow other Christians to openly express and practice their faith. There are in Moscow several Catholic and Anglican churches. So who of the two needs to be converted? And I see Russia as almost filling this gap that was previously America's as far as protecting Christians, because America is now persecuting Christians, even her own. I mean, the cancel culture and everything else. There is no room in the woke America for conservative Christians, and it's very obvious that we're despised. And not just us, but the West in general. So, it just reminds me, I mean, they are heretics. They're in schism. It's the Orthodox Church. They deny the Pope. However, America was also instituted, or I guess you could say founded by heretics as well. But that didn't stop America in the early days, at least, from, most of our history, from at least finding value in the virtues of Christianity, so to speak. So that's my point. Whereas now, no, that's not good. And so if you think I'm joking about this, or if you think I'm making this up, I want to show you something else. All right. So now we have this. MI6 boss criticized for tweet about LGBT rights. This is the head, right? The head of MI6 has been criticized on social media after posting about the agency's inclusive policies to mark LGBTQ or whatever plus History Month while Russia continued its invasion of Ukraine. Richard Moore, also known as C, wrote, with the tragedy and destruction unfolding so distressingly in Ukraine, we should remember the values and hard-won freedoms that distinguish us from Putin. None more than the LGBT plus rights. He also quoted an MI6 employee who called P, who said, I had to move for the job when I joined MI6, so I was relieved, M1's whatever it is, it's their CIA, to find out there was a LGBTQ, whatever, network group. Through the group, I've made some great friends in the office. It's reassuring to know it's there for support if I need it. So, okay, criticize him all you want, but you have to understand, he's not lying. That is the truth. So Putin sees this agenda amassing on territory that was historically part of Russia, but never mind that, in which most people, the territories in dispute are not upset that Russia is in there, by the way. So there's two sides to the story, but he sees this as a threat because these types of people that have taken over the West with their LGBTQ things and their gender confusion and their satanic nastiness are pushing weapons, amassing weapons in Ukraine. So, you have to understand, it's not that simple. And I will be the first one to say, I do not believe, war is a horrible thing. War is an absolutely terrible thing, and I do not agree with invading another country the way Putin is doing. But he's obviously at the point where he's been backed into some sort of corner, or he's part of this globalist agenda. I'm not really sure, but the answer is not as simple as him being a monster, an evil dictator, and all these things. The new Hitler, as some people are saying, it's like the opposite almost. So on top of that, what are the real problem is the larger implications. The larger implications for the economy. The larger implications for the fact that this will be, especially if it continues, a destabilizing force now amongst Europe, amongst that part of the world. The United States could also see some retaliation or whatever. But more importantly, the thing that makes me nervous about the whole situation is while I tend to lean more towards the viewpoints that Putin is trying to present as a Christian, wanting a Christian society, he doesn't acknowledge the Pope. So what are those implications? Well, I if he's dead set on fighting globalists and Nazis and things like that, I fear he's going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. And if he does get into a position of power in Europe, I fear for the future of Rome. But as we know, as our Lord has told us, the gates of hell will not prevail. So could Russia be used as an instrument, either indirectly or directly, to bring the church through her renewal? Yes, I don't see why not. There's a lot of implications that this could have. World War III is not obviously out of the question. It's looking more likely every day. Nuclear war, definitely economic devastation, and who knows? I personally see things getting much, much worse before they get better. I personally see large scale wars. I see these, whether it's going to be from this or not, it's going to be these civil type wars escalating, nation rising against nation, into worldwide unrest. I don't put nukes out of the question at all. But we have to understand the West has not been on the right, at least the powers of the West, the leaders of the West, not so much the average Joe, but the people in charge are not on the right side of history. And I don't think that's hard to see for anyone who has eyes to see. Anybody who pushes this woke agenda is going to have their day of reckoning, whether that be through the events that have been now initiated or at some point in the future. I don't know. But the earth and the church and the West especially are going to be purified. Make no mistake about it. There is going to be a reckoning. It's not going to go on like this where the West gets to enjoy this smoke and mirrors, this aura of morality when they're doing the devil's bidding. God's not going to be mocked. It's not going to go on. And so they're going to obviously, they're going to persecute people who rise up against this pagan world order, who rise up against and say, no, we don't want LGBT rights and all this stuff. And America spreading its false enlightenment everywhere is another problem that maybe I'll just get into that now. So, we want to talk about the Muslims and things like that. And that's another problem I see happening. When Russia becomes increasingly more isolated, as we now see that's happening by the West, obviously the European Union and things like that are now isolating and sanctioning Russia. America's sanctioning Russia. You see all this stuff. Russia's going to have no choice but to make new allies. And who is it going to be? Well, it's going to be the other people who hate the West, which is Islam, the Muslim world. So we're going to have this really weird situation where that's going to probably create some sort of persecution of the church as well. But my point is, they're not wrong. They're not entirely wrong. They're wrong about a lot, but what they're not wrong about is their animosity towards the West, their animosity towards America, thinking it can be up on its high horse of morality and going into places, in the Middle East and for their own purposes, I'm sure, but trying to spread this enlightenment and this democracy. America would be better off if we were creating these wars to go spread Christianity. Not that that would be okay, but it would be better than spreading LGBT rights. Like, you know what I mean? So the Muslims, obviously, while I don't agree with Sharia law and all this stuff, is that worse than this? Than LGBT and not knowing your gender? I would argue no. I would argue chopping off the private parts of children is worse than covering your face and your head. Like, um, so not that there's not horrible things that go on in the Muslim world, because there are, but my point is it's not that simple. It's not as simple as America wanting to spread democracy and be the good guys. Like, what democracy are we spreading? Like, what do we want other countries to be run by people like Nancy Pelosi? Because we have our own problems. Like, stop trying to make people, eat the pill of the false enlightenment that came out of the Enlightenment. So anyway, that's my spiel. It's not that simple. To the people who say, who deny the consecration of Russia, that I ask you to explain this then, to explain the fruits that have apparently come from John Paul II's consecration, at least the graces to end or appear to start. I will say that Russia has not been completely converted. Russia will not be completely converted until it's Catholic, in my opinion. That's the highest standard. That's what I believe. But what about this process? It seems like they have entered into a period of saying no, like we reject the satanic pagan New World Order sort of thing, and we prefer to keep our Christian values. That to me seems like at least part of their conversion, does it not? It seems to me that Putin, when he talks, is a lot more reasonable than our president, who I can't even understand, and who thinks he can go and receive communion and then come out and promote laws to kill babies in the womb. So I'm a little confused as to the traditionalists and the people that say Russia hasn't been consecrated to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Okay, then explain this. When what is the answer? Is it just because of the prayers of the faithful that Russia has made any progress at all? And listen, I'm all for, like, let's consecrate Russia again. Why not? Like, just to make sure. Like, I'm all for that. But we're in this situation, and the church makes me so mad, because of course they're going to toe the line of the official Western narrative of prayers for Ukraine. Yes, we should pray for the war zone of Ukraine right now, but we need to also pray for Russia as well. We need to pray for both sides and stop being one-sided and stop towing the line of the globalists. That's our problem, and that's why we will suffer. So let me know what you think in the comments. Joan of Arc Media out.